how do you pronounce the name of the album? Because I wasn't sure I was saying it
Sure.
correctly.
Ophiuchus, I think.
Okay.
Ophiuchus.
Okay. Because, as you explain on your website, admittedly, that is one that I have not heard of. And I think a lot of people have not heard of that particular sign within the zodiac.
Well, that's, I mean, that was kind of what, I mean, obviously, like I say, all of this stuff's about me, as I try to frame it up a different way. But, uh, I've studied astronomy. I've studied esoteric practices, occultism, magic, things like that. Um, and that was kind of the concept. Is I realized that the sun was actually in that constellation when I was born, and started looking into the history of the horoscope and the zodiac, and realized that like those dates were set 2,000 years ago,
Mhm.
and really haven't nobody's really questioned it since then. Some people do. They call themselves sidereal astrologers,
Oh,
sidereal zodiac, which sidereal means stars, celestial, whatever. But for the most part, what's in the New York Times, and what's in the fortune cookies and whatnot, or whatever have you, is based on antiquated astronomy, and the stars are moving, right? Like Polaris, that was named forever ago, was named Polaris because it lined right up with the North Pole, and you could use it as a guiding light. And if you do that now, you're going to be going in a little circle on the side of the Earth, because Vega is actually closer to the North Pole, uh,
oh,
as a guiding light. So, I mean, it was just, on top of the fact that it was my birthday, that I've been lied to my entire life and been told I'm Sagittarius. Uh, I like the idea of combining like materialism and esoteric kind of mysticism, and magic in there. And I think that like anything, there are so many people that choose one or the other when the answer is both, right? So
yeah. I mean, because that was the interesting thing as you go through this album is everything that you write about in terms of the zodiac and the movement of the sun and everything, very kind of big picture, high concept kind of thing. But then when you drill down to each song and each lyric,
yeah.
it's very much focused on the little moments in front of us and the tangible. And I'm wondering, so those two elements, how often are they in sync, would you say? And how often is it they're, I don't know, kind of bumping up against each other as warring factions?
Well, I think those are two things that happen a lot. Right. I think that they're both things that have been talked about for thousands of years in different ways. And I like that you noticed that. It's something that I noticed too. It's not something that I necessarily deliberately did. But, you know, Aleister Crowley used to say, as above, so below. So the, the big high concept stuff and the little granular detail stuff, I think definitely, coincide and harmonize. Just like when you look at a flower and it has the same pattern as or those types of things. But at the same time, the concept of yin and yang, of how that there's always conflict between conceptual stuff, between practical things, and then that's what moves us along, is that balance that is never completely in balance, because then it'd be static, but
Hmm.
it always kind of on the aggregate exists.
Yeah. And I can understand being interested in this, just in generally and as an academic pursuit. But what amazes me is that you were able to craft songs to go along with each stage, and you even rolled them out to the general public, in sync with their corresponding zodiac. Because it for many, at least for many songwriters that I've talked to, there has to be a little bit of the muse whispering in your ear and you just kind of get inspiration.
Yeah.
So if you're relying on that, though, how do you cram the muse into, all right, here's the plan, you know?
Well, again, a lot of this was conceptual, and I just kind of like let it go. Some of these songs are relatively old. Some of them are very recent discoveries. I try always as much as I can to frame it in songwriting is in discovery. I don't like to think that I made it, that I crafted it. Like I find it, and maybe if I do anything after that, it's like arranging flowers in a bouquet or shaping gold into jewelry. But the gold itself is something I find. The flowers themselves are something that have existed independent of me. I'm just lucky enough or attentive enough or both to come across them. But as far as it goes, I tried my best to like think, okay, does this song go with this astrological sign kind of traditionally? And I mean, with all astrological signs, I think, we've associated them with these vague characteristics that if you're told over and over again that you have the traits of a Virgo because of your star sign, then you start to become that, right? And I think social factors are certainly more influential in most people's lives, especially now, than celestial ones. So I don't think that people that have always thought they were a Virgo or always thought they were a Capricorn, I don't think that they necessarily don't have those characteristics because the stars are different. I don't know that those characteristics were ever necessarily meaningful, other than the meaning that we put on them. And that's kind of like, if there's anything that I'm always trying to do, like cerebrally or academically, is to express that kind of existential philosophy that we are the ones that decide what is important. One of my favorite examples of that is the Olympics. When you watch the Olympics and you're watching it like midnight and you see the Polish indoor volleyball team, and you realize that this Polish indoor volleyball team that's going to finish dead last in this competition, that there's a group of people in Warsaw, Poland, to whom indoor volleyball is the most important thing in their lives. They're not going to be successful at it, on a grand scale. But for 4 years, like they dedicate themselves to this. And I see it, hungover at, 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning while the Olympics is on and think, these guys are clowns. But to them, and just like they would probably look at, the fact that I am spending all of my time, energy, and thought trying to come up with conceptual, artistic ways to share my music with people, they'd be like, it's just music, man. Whereas I'm like, it's just indoor volleyball, guys,
Right.
We put the meanings on these zodiac signs. We put the meanings on, religion, politics, money, whatever it may be. To me, it's music. To me, it's that connection. That's what I find important. And I think that that's something that connects me to, lives and spirits and realities way outside of my own little 50 to 100 years that I'm going to be on this planet in this particular form. I think it's something that's been going through me forever. I don't understand how Polish indoor volleyball is an ancient sacred calling, but they do.
Right. Yeah. Hey, if that's what quote from John Lennon, whatever gets you through the night,
There you go.
So but and then it's interesting because a lot of these songs, they have kind of a very intimate feel, and even your singing, particularly with like say Rules of War, you're kind of leaning in. I don't know how else to describe it, but vocally you're leaning in, and it's not. I was listening to it and I'm like, you don't hear that a lot anymore. It's like either if people are very serious, they're kind of leaning back, kind of distant, or they're going at the top of their volume, just to blow everything away. No. So, I'm wondering, how did you get to the point where you're comfortable with that leaning in? Because there's a vulnerability, it seems, that comes with that, because it's as strong as your voice is, there's a vulnerability that you hear in it.
Well, I take that as a compliment because I feel like to me that is where I am able to open up and receive connection as much as well as give it out is by making myself vulnerable. And with this album and these songs on this album, I think you're on to something. You know, my last few releases were of other people's songs. I was on a tribute album to David Olney. I was incredibly grateful and honored to be a part of that. And before that, I'd released a song with Jamie Harris, Dead Flowers by Rolling Stones. And the last like multiple song thing that I'd done was a 7-song project, EP, mini album. However, you know, the record stores don't put it in there anyway, so it doesn't matter. But it was all of my father-in-law's songs. So the reason uh, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to make this a full length album and I wanted to put as many, you know, different kinds of songs on there is because I wanted it to represent what I, you know, aspire to in music, which is, you know, personal, vulnerable connection to people that are willing to send it back to me. I want to be open to it. And I think that that's the best way for me to signal that. But it's a very personal album. All the songs I either wrote or co-wrote. You know, I talk about things that are very important to me and things that I've been meditating on for years now, like forgiveness, like war, like, you know, philosophy and ontology and, you know, mythology, you know, things that are important to me. That's what this is. I don't know who else they're important to. I don't know how that blend necessarily works. But like you say, I tried my best to bring in as many different influences because that is something that's important to me. And it's something that, you know, like I feel like my heroes do is not necessarily worry about genre, but worry about relationships between the people that they're playing with and the music that they're playing. And I think that, you know, I've got 4 different drummers on this record. I've got 5 different keyboard players throughout this record. Only one bass player. There's only one Daniel
Okay.
Seymour. Daniel Seymour is my guy forever. Uh, but you know, I mean, I've got all sorts of different musicians that I love and respect. It's one of the benefits of being in Nashville for sure too. Um, the crop that you have, but you know, I wanted each song to have its own personality, and I wanted each song to also like reflect something that I feel is very important and care about a lot. You know,
Hmm.
Last King of the Blues was brought to me, but it's a hugely important song, and I was glad I got to write a piece of it. But that kind of history and mythology, you know, and then 1 Million Children and Rules of War, both very important songs to me because I get really, really, really anxious and depressed when I think about the people that have to deal with the consequences of the horrible decisions of our politicians, you know. And Forgive Yourself and I Deserve to Be Forgiven, 2 hugely important songs to me because I really think that at the core of everything, forgiveness is there because it's an acknowledgement that we're all the same. You know, that
Hmm.
every human, every living thing is a part of God, the universe, the Tao, whatever you want to call it, but we're all the same. And if you can forgive yourself and forgive other people, then you can connect with them. And, you know, that's a vulnerability. It takes a lot of vulnerability to forgive yourself. Most people can't even admit that they deserve forgiveness or even, you know, require it. You
Yeah.
know, and that's something I've had to work on a lot in my life. So, you know, I mean, every song on this is very important to me, every single
Hmm.
one, you know, from the first one, which is kind of my attempt to create a new mythology for this character, Ophiuchus, to the very last one, which to me is a prayer to music itself. So,
Yeah. And you know, I'm wondering, with that vulnerability and with, you know, the leaning in and everything, is that difficult to recreate in a live setting, you know, where there's people and they're drinking and all this kind of stuff, you know,
for
is
me,
it?
it's no, it's the opposite. It's because I mean, I honestly I feel more vulnerable the less the crowd is listening. You know, when I feel very connected, that can, you know, when the crowd is, when the audience of 1 to 1,000, no matter who it is really paying attention and locked into me, I feel like we're together, like we're both vulnerable, but we've got each other.
Yeah.
Um, when it's me playing to a bunch of people that would rather, that aren't necessarily interested or trying to have a conversation or whatever, I feel more vulnerable. But honestly, that kind of fuels me. Like I don't get louder, I don't get quieter, I just get more within myself. I mean, I don't get louder, I do get quieter and I get more within myself. And strangely, it usually happens that when I get quieter, people tend to quiet down too and start connecting and paying attention. I don't do it for that reason. It's just kind of a natural, ebb and flow. And when I was younger, I certainly didn't, because I was a lot more ego at that point. I'm still plenty of ego now, but I see it. I see where it is most of the time, and I can set it aside. Use it to know which mouth to put the drink into, but try to not use it for much more than that. Whereas when I was younger, I was utterly convinced that I was the smartest person on earth, and a couple
many
of
young people are
being demonstrably proven wrong.
Well, you were, so many young people. That's a rite of passage in
Sure.
some embarrassing way,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad I went through it, and I forgive myself for all of it.
Right. And then, it's kind of staying with that vulnerability and such. The song in particular, "Crooked Roads," and others on the album, where you allude to the medical trials and tribulations that your wife has undergone.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, like with "Crooked Roads," is that a song you wanted to write or you had to write? Because I would.
It was. I mean, it was unavoidable. It was definitely an unavoidable song, and like I say occasionally when I sing it, had things turned out differently, it wouldn't have made the album, right? But I finished that song the night before she went into surgery. I finished that song on the 5th of December. I had it kind of written, and I wasn't trying to write it, but it was that melody and a few of those phrases, like the very first phrase, "I know life hadn't been what you expected," and then the phrase, the very last phrase in the song, like those two just kind of wouldn't get out of my mind. And while we were going through all of that anxiety, it's whatever I could put my mind on to keep moving forward and stay away from fear and stay away from casting bad magic and negative energy into the world, and try to put in positive energy and gratitude out there. Hopefully you receive that. And we did. And I'm grateful. But the night before, I forget exactly what it was that I had in there. But the night before, I was just sitting at the piano, and those lines came to me. "We're going to make it through the 6th of December. Till then, all power and guidance and wisdom to Dr. Sarah Bick," who was her neurosurgeon that was going to be operating on her tomorrow. And I think that I found that and was able to, at least reinforce her, Dr. Sarah Bick's, utmost confidence, wisdom, and power, and, competence, along with my wife's unbelievable courage and strength and steadiness throughout that entire process. That being able to, because of those two people and what they were bringing, it was able to show me that was the right way to be feeling about this. And it also happened to rhyme with the line before it, which was nice.
Well, yeah. So then
it was the line before it. It was the best life that I've ever had, and it was like something like good and bad, whatever. But it was the best life that I can remember, because I don't know if it's the best life I've ever had, and that made sense, a little bit more sense at the time, and it rhymed with December. So.
Yeah. Okay, so definitely meant to be as far as that goes. The other thing that to me would seem to be an extra challenge with that particular tune, it's like I get the idea of okay, I want something to put my mind on, as I'm watching the clock just go incrementally slower and slower, and and the therapy of, okay, I'm getting this out of my system and expressing what's going on. But then how do you shift to a point where you're like the editor going, all right, is this a good song?
You know, that's a great question, and one that I don't have an answer for clearly, but I will ramble a little bit about it.
Sure.
No, I try not to put too much value judgments on songs, because you know different people have different values. Different people are going to like it. Like I've said before to other people, if everybody liked it, it wouldn't be art; it'd be dopamine. So I don't know. I know that for me, a good song is one that's sincere.
Mhm.
And I can believe that it's coming from them. And people can think I'm full of whatever they want to, but I cry still every time I play that song. I mean, when I play that song, it brings me back to those times, and I'm getting a little shaky now thinking about it. That was such a tumultuous time. So to me, that's what makes it a good song, is that I mean it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter if I'm playing to a lot of people or few people. That's one of those songs that when I play it, I am back in that period of time. And
Mhm.
not even necessarily that period of time, but 2 weeks later, when everything had unwound and she was fine. And I mean, when we walked into the hospital room right after her surgery and she was cracking jokes at people, sure,
Yeah.
doing it right now. Yeah, I mean, that's the time it puts me in, is like that gratitude and relief, and that just thank God we made it.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I think that's a very seasoned songwriter way to kind of go about it, is just having that kind of, all right, I'm going to let go to some extent about all this. And there's other points in this album where I thought, all right, here's something that a novice songwriter I don't think would do, in the sense of like Rules of War. There are points when it just stops and you get absolute silence for a second.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because it's quite a dramatic thing, and it really just grabs the person. But you know, I would think a younger songwriter wouldn't have the knowledge to do that, or the courage to do it, because it's always like, I've got to have constant sound and
Right.
going, and so
People
silence in
are
a
scared
song.
to death of silence. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
How long did it
In
take you
real
to
life
get
and music too, for sure.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get comfortable enough to, dance with the silence, so to speak?
I maybe I'm fortunate, and maybe it's just my influences, but to me, the dynamic, the rest, the push and pull, like that's what moves me when I'm really feeling a song intensely. And that song, another one that was really unavoidable, like the way that song was written, it was written so fast, it was crazy. I had a songwriting appointment, whatever, that happens in Nashville. I rarely get anything done during those things, but I use them as a pretext to hang out with cool people. But I hate putting pressure on, oh, we have to finish a song or whatever. I'll bring an instrument and we'll talk and we'll see what's up. And I just bought an Omnichord, a 1984 Suzuki Omnichord. It's just like a little. I mean, it's not a toy. It's a wonderful instrument, but it's an 80s kind of spacey,
Huh.
synthesizer, harp combination that I love. And I brought it over to Judy Blank's house, and because she's got this slacker space pop kind of thing that she does that I absolutely love. And I mean, talk about a brilliant craftsperson of songs. I mean, she's it. But it wasn't even about that. Like, she pulled it out and she was like, "Oh, I used to have one of these," and she just started messing around with it. And my intention was to write a song about alien pancakes, because I just read this story about this old farmer in the 60s in Wisconsin that got visited by extraterrestrials, and they gave him pancakes and left. And I was like, that's a wonderful story. And that's a Judy Blank story if I've ever heard one. But, I went over there and she turned the little synth beat thing onto tango and started playing this thing. And, it was just kind of this like 1-4-5 blues progression in a minor key, and it's like, oh, this is really cool. Let's do this too. And we had the entire chord progression kind of worked out in 45 minutes, and we didn't have any words, and it was definitely not a song about alien pancakes at that point. And I opened up my book, my little notebook, and it was a relatively new one. I mean, very new one. It only had one little kind of scribble in there, and it was this concept that I had actually kind of been thinking about as a co-write with a different writer in town. I won't say his name as to, because it's such a good song. I don't want to, rub it in that he didn't get in on it first, but I've done that in person already. But, and it just the meter and the idea and all of it just worked perfectly. And I mean, the whole song was 95% the shape that it is now, as far as structure, lyrics, and things like that in like 2 hours. So that was one of those like unavoidable things, just somebody was going to find it. Thank goodness it was, me and Judy.
So. Right. Wow. And then another example of what I would call, experienced songwriting is the tune Rushing Back, because there aren't many words in it, but it says a lot.
One sentence. Yeah, well, that one, and I really appreciate that you picked up on that. I personally think that that's one of my favorite songs on there. And I think that if people really listen and pay attention to it, I mean, that one sentence says a lot. And what that was is, you can kind of figure it out, but I had someone very close to me that I lost. And, that's an older song. That song's probably 20 years old. And I wrote that song in a van with an old band on my way to Nashville for the very first time in my life when I was still living back in Mississippi. We were on our way to Nashville to play a little show, and I mean, I was just depressed, and I had been writing down all these details, clever stories, descriptive terms, and maybe one day I'll write a short story or a novella about this person's life. But, the overwhelming thing was that I couldn't stop the memories. And that's, and that's just where that came from. It was like, there was nothing else that I really needed to say, but that was how I was feeling, was every little thing was rushing back,
Yeah. And I think, for most people who have, again, lived beyond the age of, say, 20, they've had some sort of experience that they can identify with that.
Right.
But
of course, they're brilliant musicians. You have to have brilliant musicians like Seth Fox and, Dan Seymour and Zach Douglas playing all those wonderful notes to keep it to where it's not boring,
No, yeah, it's definitely not, and it carries things along, and you just kind of flow with it. And then it's only afterward you realize, there weren't a lot of lyrics in here, but it felt like there was a lot of emotion. And again, I think a younger songwriter would have tried to cram as many words into that as possible. Yeah. And so it's,
and I did. I was a younger songwriter and did that, and that's kind of what that was. The result of that was kind of like letting go and saying, no, this is what the song says. This is what the song says. All this other stuff might be another song. It might be another flower, another piece of gold, another piece of jewelry. But this song says this. It says every little thing comes rushing back.
Yeah. No, and I think, it's, at least for, it's interesting when people like, all right, I'm going to not try and cram this into a formula, and I'm going to realize, no, it's done in its current state,
Yeah. I mean, again, I think that's that. If you want to call it maturity, which I certainly will cop to that. There's more salt in the beard every day, but it is. It's letting go, but it's also, again, it's one of the, to me, a benefit of realizing that it's not my ego that's making these songs. It's discovering them. And, just like the Buddhist philosophers and stuff say, like, you've never seen a picture of an ugly wave. you've never seen a misshapen cloud, and that's what a song is, and when you put a song in a box, you can't put a wave in a box. You can't put a cloud in a box. You can't put a mountain into a grid. So,
Right. Yeah, it's like this
they're
band
beautiful how they are.
right. Like this band I did some work with last year called Red Wanting Blue out of Ohio, and they have on their latest album they had these little vignettes, these little not full songs, and they're just kind of more intros and outros and bridges between different ideas. But it's great because it's like, well, if they had tried to extend those out into full songs, I think it would have ruined them. And
Full
they
song,
work.
right?
Yeah. They work perfectly as
Right.
these little things. And
Sometimes there's one tulip, in a swamp. Are you going to take baby's breath and try to, are you going to pluck it out of this swamp to where it's going to die before you get it all the way out?
right.
Are you going to take, are you going to take carnations and try to make it look better? Like it's what it is, and it's perfect that way.
Yeah. And then,
because I got some 6-minute ones and I got some 2-minute ones. It's like I don't control that. I mean, as much as I would like to.
Yeah.
I tried to make "I Deserve to Be Forgiven" a shorter song because, I got fooled into it for a little while, thinking that this should be on the radio. This should be on the radio. And the radio's play a 6-minute long song, but I can't take 1 second out of that song. It falls apart.
Yeah.
Falls apart.
So. Yeah. No, yeah, that the other side of that particular coin is, there are some, fantastic works out there where it's like, holy cow, this is like 3 songs in one, but you don't want to chop it up because then it would ruin everything.
I mean, what would how would you change "Day in the Life" by the Beatles? How would you change that? And that doesn't make any sense at all from like a songcraft person, a songcraft kind of way to go to do it.
Right. Exactly.
But it's perfect.
Yeah. And then zooming out, I do encourage people to go to the website and read, this for lack of a better term, small dissertation that you have to accompany the album,
Essay.
Yeah, exactly. Because it does kind of set things up and it helps you look at things in a new way. And you touched upon this earlier, and you go into it in more depth in the essay, is the idea of the kind of weaponization of attention, and attention is a powerful force, and people have learned to use that, and yet I don't know, and you argue that's why it's a struggle for art to exist in this current world, because it's all about attention.
Right.
But it's like to me, I'm like, we need a different word for it, because they always say, oh, it's the attention economy, and the more I think about it, it's like, well, it's the attention hostage economy, because it's like
it's the attention deficit economy.
Right.
The economy the spreadsheets seem to go up as human attention span goes down, like they're inversely related. It's only mentioned as one sentence here, but I think it's one of the most important discoveries of humanity. And we don't talk about it enough, but a lot of people think about it a lot. And that's when we found out that, attention changes the nature of light.
To be honest, your website was the first I had read about that. I hadn't encountered that before.
I studied physics in college. I got a minor in it because I kind of checked out a little bit. The math got too hard. The concepts were fascinating, but the math got a little too hard for me at that point. But basically, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, Dirac, things like that. It's just shown that if you are measuring light as if it is a wave, it will act like a wave. If you are measuring light as if it is a particle, it will act like a particle. So the observer changes the nature of light. One of the hardest things to understand, in quantum mechanics, and then you lose me. I mean, I try my best to understand it, but people do. People that understand it, and they use it, and they understand what they're doing when they use it, or at least they understand the results of it and how it can be manipulated. And I mean, I think that's a huge thing that we don't appreciate enough in our day-to-day life. But it's ancient, right? I mean, this is why the Buddhists and the Hindus and the ancient societies, even the early Christians and the other, Judaism and Islam, there's so much of an emphasis on prayer, meditation, silent reflection, because that's hard. It's really hard. And that is the exercise of your attention. It really is. And we've convinced ourselves that it's laziness to do that. To be quiet and still is counterproductive, when it's not. It's actually the reason that one of the main reasons that I think we're having the amount of problems we are in society is because people think that they have to be focused on something in the material world constantly. Instead of quiet reflection. And it's not a religious thing, but it's something that that humans have understood on a core level for a long time, and we've forgotten very recently en masse. So
but
sorry, I could preach on this. I'm sorry.
No, because I mean, I get it, and it's something that frustrates me, in my own world. And because the way I think about it is, it's like there's art that you would happily focus on, but you can't help but look at the car crash. And so now people are using the car crash, creating the car crash over and over and over again. And
there's a Maslowian kind of factor to it, where the less money people have, the more stressed they are about material things like food, shelter, economic things, then the more they feel compelled to be on alert and always be in kind of fight or flight mode. Whereas as a species, we've gotten to a place where we can reflect on art, where we can reflect on beauty and self-fulfillment and things like that. But the people, whoever they are, and I will say it, I'm a little bit of a conspiratorial guy, just because if you're not, I don't think you're paying enough attention. You know what I mean? But those who understand it, and you can kind of see who it is that understands it, because they're the ones with billions of dollars. They understand that if they can manipulate your attention and keep your attention off of those things and keep you on that third level of Maslowian existence, then they can make more money. Whatever good that seems to be doing them.
Right. And I don't know if this is a fair question to throw out, but since you did broach the subject in your essay, it's like, okay, so how does the artist move forward in this world?
It's difficult. It's difficult. I do it by having something else to provide me with an income. I can't be an artist alone. I have to work and make money so that I can afford to make my art, because the art is, it's not profitable. It doesn't show up on the bottom of the spreadsheet. The supply demand curve is not in the artist's favor. I think meditation and constantly questioning why you're doing it, and understanding why you're doing it, and making sure that you're not doing it for recognition, admiration, wealth, things like that. To me, it is either a mental disorder or an ancient sacred calling. Probably both, but they both deserve respect.
Right.
I want to
Yeah,
honor either one of them. But yeah,
right,
if I'm not hurting anybody, then my mental disorder is benign.
right.
But I mean, I do believe that it's an ancient and, for lack of better terms, sacred thing that needs to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
we can listen to beautiful recordings of the past, and that's why the supply demand curve doesn't work in our favor, because every 80 million billion songs that come out every week or whatever it is are economically competing with the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and Bach and, you know Scott Joplin and
Yeah.
whoever it is. um, but we're compelled to find what's next.
Mhm.
And I think our species depends on it. Depends on artists finding what's next and showing us what's important. And I want to be a part of that. And again, I'm compelled to. If I had a choice about this would be a dumb choice. I mean, if I was like, what am I going to do? Oh, well, I'm going to work a full-time job so that I can work another full-time job that doesn't pay me because it
Right.
satisfies my soul,
Yeah.
or salves my mental disorder, whatever the case may be, however you want to interpret it.
Right. Right.
I'll let the professionals figure that one out.
Yeah. Right. Right. Or, my own little rebellion is, I have a sadistic pleasure in still listening to, compact discs and vinyl records. A
We've never got better fidelity than compact disc other than being in the same room. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the sound is much better, especially if you have a even decent stereo system. And B, there's just I just love the idea that the tech companies have no idea what I'm listening to or how often I'm
Right.
listening to it or any of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Something beautiful about that. And you're compelled to listen to the entire discovery, as the artist felt, it should be arranged. You
Yes.
know, I've been through phases where my favorite artist was shuffle, and it's not spiritually satisfying like listening to like an album from front to back. Like,
Yeah.
people just don't have that kind of time, or at least they don't think they do. Anyway,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. So,
Too many
all
things
right.
competing.
Well, that takes care of all of my questions. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to talk
No, I think we got from the beginning of the universe to the end and all that. Yes.
I mean,
we,
there are a
we
few outer
covered,
lying.
we covered music,
Yeah.
art, quantum mechanics,
Right.
the nature of light. No, I mean, if I'm going to say, if there's anything I do want to add about this, one of the things that has really tied this project together and made it even more important has been the art of Cora Lee. She's made illustrations for each one of these songs, and her magnificent art in all of this has been a brush of wind on a dying fire so many times over the last year. She's inspired me, collaborated with me, and I mean, I would be remiss if every time I talk about this album, I don't talk about how important her contributions have been to it. And I don't know when this is going to air, but the pre-orders, if you pre-order it, you're going to get a booklet of the lyrics and her illustrations that come with it. I just got them in today, which was another gust of wind on a
Mhm.
dying fire. I don't know if this is darkest before the dawn, but this whole process has been exhausting to my old ass. Uh, but they are beautiful, and yeah, again, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how important her work, how beautiful it's been, her energy. I mean, she's made sacrifices to get these out, and I've made that poor woman work harder than she ever thought when I brought this idea to her over a year ago. So yeah,
And
that's those illustrations are just fantastically beautiful, and like, she's included so much symbolism and careful, thoughtful care. Yeah,
yeah.
just care. Yeah. So
And out of curiosity, did you give her any direction, or did she listen to like early demos?
no, she listened to the songs like, I mean, this plan got into place before most of the album was even tracked.
Okay.
And the schedule was such that, I mean, I released Invocation, which I had recorded. It's the only one that I didn't record at the Grey Garden studio. I had recorded it sometime before that. And that wasn't exactly why it became became Invocation, because I was trying to invoke this entire process. And it seemed fitting that it be the first release, but the last song. So that kind of fueled me to like be, okay, I've got some patience, I've got some time to get, the next songs done. But I started releasing it before it was finished recording. And she's been doing these illustrations like kind of, it's just been one step. Like I get the song done, give it to her, she gets the illustration done. And I mean, I guess we wrapped on all the recording and mixing in like August, but she just finished up the illustrations, about 6-7 weeks ago. It's just been a constant process where we've just been, I don't know. I mean, to me, like I just kind of trust that things are going to work out. And if they don't, then they weren't supposed to. It's fine, but they did in this case. But no, she listened to the songs as they were finished, and I didn't really give her much suggestions. Most of the illustrations she sent to me, I was like, perfect, amazing. The very first one, we had some discussion about the typeface and the font and things like that. And we were back and forth on it, because I was kind of trying to think about it as in like, there's going to be 12 illustrations and I want there to be some kind of through line to it. And we finally landed on, my handwriting for each one of them. So I made a font out of my handwriting, and I think that that's worked perfectly with like kind of the vintage style and the personal detail and care that she's put into it, that my handwriting is a part of it. And then really the only other thing is that Pisces was last king of the blues, so I asked her nicely if they could be catfish.
Nice.
And they
Okay.
are. So she was agreeable to that idea. And I mean, I still think that that's probably one of my favorites, but I go back and forth on that. The Gemini one for Sphere Shift, where the two alien twins are shooting lights out of their hands.
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
Rules of War one. I mean, it looks like it looks like it's gonna, some of those, what do they do? I forget where the place is where they all go put on the Eyes Wide Shut mask and chant satanic
Oh,
rituals and
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
That looks like a tattoo on, Hillary Clinton's back from one of those meetings. Some dark shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she just came up with it for Libra, and it was like, that's perfect. So, no, I
Nice.
mean, she's a brilliant artist. And, on top of that, she's actually also probably my favorite songwriter, or among, the top 3 or 4 of my favorite songwriters in this town. And I just admire her and everything that she puts out artistically. It's just stunning.